Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SciOly Stats YouTube channel, and also welcome to the 2025 season. Yeah, this is the first video I'm doing on the 2025 season. I know I haven't posted anything in a while. A lot of people were wondering if I died or something. I'm not dead, I assure you. Um, there hasn't been too much to talk about yet, other than all of these invitationals that we're going to be going over today. Yeah, this is going to be pretty similar to my first video that I did last year or last season. Um, just going over where we are now and the preliminary results that we've been given. And of course, as with last year, I will try and make a video once every week, every 2 weeks, roughly. Depends on how much there is to talk about. Yeah, so let's just. There we go. Let's just get right into this. So this is my ranking right now. Um, I have a lot of stuff to talk about, and I tend to talk a lot. So let's just get started here and start explaining things. I guess first, if you're unfamiliar with how this works, I don't have like a model or anything for this. I just kind of like look at the teams and how well they do in these invitationals. I'm like, yeah, it looks like they'd be about here or about there or something like that. Um, and on this tab, I have all of the invitationals here that are on Duosmium. All of this comes from Duosmium. All of it is public. So you can go look at the full results for any of these invitationals yourself. So I have this year, what I'm doing is I'm putting all of the teams that got top five. I will always put those. And then if there's any other teams that either made nationals or that I want to keep on my radar that aren't in the top five, I'll add those. So, for example, Fairfax, we have two Langley teams. They did get in the top five here, but typically I'll add B teams unless I really don't feel like it. Um, yeah, so I have the two Langley teams here, and Basis from DC. They are the district champion for DC, not a state, district champion. Um, and Same thing here, Burr and Burton Academy. Not a very competitive team nationally. They actually got second to last year last year, but still, they are the Vermont state champions. So we'll keep an eye on them. And speaking of which, one thing I wanted to talk about is that we actually have a decent bit of data for a lot of these less competitive teams. You can see Burr and Burton Academy has, I believe, this is their only. Yep, this is their only appearance so far. South Winster has actually done quite a few invitationals here. Looks like four here that we have data for them, so that's really good. We also have data for what's the school called? The Nebraska state champion. I'll just do this. There we go. Lincoln Science Focus. We actually have quite a bit of data for them as well. We have some data from Kansas and even like Morgantown, uh, West Virginia here. They're the West Virginia state champion. We have a data point for them too. So it's really interesting and actually really cool to see a lot of these less competitive schools um, attending so many invitationals and even sending a lot of teams to these invitationals as well. It's a great sign for these less competitive schools to be able to get out there and get some experience. So anyway, let's get into this. So we're going to start with Troy. Now, uh, last night when I was compiling this, I got the top 18, 19 set, and I was like, man, I really want to make it top 20. So who else do I throw in here? And I would throw in Acton Boxborough, but we don't have any data for them yet. The first thing we'll get for them is probably going to be MIT in a couple weeks. We don't have anything for them yet. Rest assured, when we do, they will very likely be in the top seven, if not, the top five or three here. Typically, a very competitive team, but we just don't have anything for them yet, so I'm not going to put them in here yet. Instead, my filler place is Troy from Michigan. Now, Michigan's a little strange this year. We'll look at Troy real quick here. You can see they did, pretty decent here, able to compete with Solon and Mason here to some extent. We'll come back to this in a second. Let's just show you all of Troy. Then here, Saline Troy Athens, again, outcompeting a lot of these Michigan teams. And here at Mason, Satellite, pretty decent performance. It's okay. But really, the reason I have them on here is because a lot of these other Michigan teams, Pioneer and Novi, the two Michigan teams that went to nationals last year, actually did pretty well. Pioneer got 11th, just outside the top 10, and Novi did way better than I expected, making it into the top half in their first ever nationals appearance. So congratulations, Novi, on that. But just a very slow start here for a lot of these Michigan teams. You can see this is the main tournament I'm looking at. Troy thoroughly outcompetes these other Michigan teams here when they're super scored. I don't know, maybe some weird situation happened with these teams and they couldn't get their best people or something like that. But you can see that's the only data point we have for Pioneer right now. Novi, we have a little bit more for, but again, just Troy outcompeting them here. So I'm going to keep them outside of the top 20 for now. Um, but that could very well change. For now, though, Troy's staying here. Next, Fulton Science Academy, a little bit lower than their national performance last year. And that's mainly because of this team, Walton. We'll get to them in a minute after I go over Fulton Science here. But really, again, similar story to Michigan, kind of just being consistently outcompeted by Walton. Um, let's see here. Georgia scrimmage, you can see they get sixth. It's not bad, I guess, but not compared to like some of these top teams here that I have ahead of Fulton Science. And again, just not bad performances, but not really what you'd expect from Fulton Science quite yet. And that brings us to Walton. So this is a team. Let's see if I have it on here. Yeah, so they actually got third in the Georgia state competition, and we're pretty close to beating Chattahoochee and even Fulton Science. They got 88, Chattahoochee got 80, and Fulton Science got 73. So a pretty competitive state competition last year. And looks like Walton's back and they are ready to play this year. So if we just take a look at their record so far, you can see here thoroughly outcompeting these other Georgia teams. Um, Down here, we can see again very strong performance overall here, beating a lot of the California teams that went to this one. And I mean, California, they can only send two teams to nationals, but I mean, if California states could send like 10, a maximum of 10 teams to nationals, they'd probably send all 10, right? I mean, California is very good overall. But again, up here, again, just outcompeting these other Georgia teams here. Um, and even in this one, Chattahoochee outcompetes Fulton Science, which is not great for Fulton Science. I'm going to keep them here for now, just because they were the Georgia State champion last year, and they did pretty decently at nationals. But so far, decently slow start. We're going to talk about Stuyvesant now. So, New York last year, of course, Syosset did absolutely fantastic at nationals. Just incredible performance from Syosset, much better than the previous year. But their other New York team, I'm trying to even remember which one was it. Ward Melville, you can see not great, still in the top half, so not bad, but just not a great performance there. And this year, Ward Melville and Great Neck South seem to be being outcompeted by this other New York team, Stuyvesant. So if we look at battle here, you can see a pretty decent score, able to compete with Westminster Plainsboro and even Harriton. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Cornell, again, pretty strong performance up there. They're maybe unstacked, maybe stacked. I super scored them just to be safe. Super scored, they get fourth. But able to compete with unstacked Montgomery and Syosset's maybe a team. We'll talk about Syosset in a little bit. But yeah, just decently strong performances across the board, and definitely outcompeting a lot of these other New York teams. Let's just see if I have anything for Great Neck South. I do. You can see just not a very good performance here. They might have scratched in some builds. They did. They still don't do that great when they're accounted for. Uh, and then Ward Melville, right? That's the other one. Let's see. Do we have anything for them? Yeah, we do. Again, just a Stuyvesant outcompeting them here pretty decently, thoroughly, I'd say. So we'll keep an eye on these, of course, but just again, slow start for some of these teams. Next, let's talk about Thomas Jefferson. So we only have one data point for Thomas Jefferson, and that is Cornell. That said, it is an absolutely phenomenal data point. I mean, very obviously unstacked here, at least these two teams. This one might have been their, the compilation of some of their less competitive people. But either way, when you super score them, absolutely phenomenal score. Outcompeting Syosset. Again, I don't really see any indication that this was Syosset's B team or that this was like an unstacked Syosset. Um, but able to outcompete Syosset there, outcompete Stuyvesant, and even, I mean, not really threaten Montgomery because, they still beat him by like 40 points. Um, we'll talk about Montgomery, of course, in a little bit. But yeah, Thomas Jefferson, just an absolutely phenomenal performance here. So why aren't they higher? Well, this is where we need to kind of keep things in perspective. Thomas Jefferson really didn't do that great at nationals outside the top 20. I mean, it's still pretty decent, but um, for this team to be placed higher, I really need more data points here. If they continue to perform at this level, like I don't know if they're going to soaps this year. Pennsylvania has a new rule where like in-state teams have like a week longer to register than out-of-state teams for invitationals. So we're going to unfortunately see a lot less out of state teams at some Pennsylvania invitationals this year, which is pretty unfortunate because it means teams like Thomas Jefferson and Montgomery and Syosset aren't going to be able to attend a lot of these tournaments. But anyway, I digress. Thomas Jefferson, again, just a phenomenal performance here, but I really need to see more data points to suggest that they're higher. If this performance holds, I can easily see them being in the top 10. But again, given their ranking at nationals, I am doubtful. Next, my home team, Cumberland Valley. So last year, I might have, well, not might have, I definitely did overestimate Cumberland Valley a little bit. Um, and I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, they're my home team. I'm pretty open about that. I'm pretty biased towards them. But this year, you can see we have a couple data points for them. Mason, they do not great, but they did scratch in a lot of these builds. And without that, they get 6, which is pretty decent. Then here at Dulles, again, scratched in. Dulles had some tournament specific events. And without those, they get 3rd, which is really impressive because they can outcompete like a Marquette here when those tournament specific events are excluded. Um, not quite Seven Lakes. Seven Lakes still did really well. And University, again, very strong California teams that just don't make nationals because California is so amazing. But Battle of Valley Forge, I mean, this is the premier data point for Cumberland Valley here. You can see outcompeting Syosset. Upon reflection, I do think this is Syosset's B team. There is a pot. If this is Syosset's A team and unstacked Cumberland Valley outcompeted them, they are easily within the top 3. But I don't think that's true. I think this is Syosset's B team. Still, without that, they outcompete Les Winster, they outcompete Stuyvesant, and they outcompete Harriton. Again, we'll get to Harriton in just 1 second here. First, we're going to talk about Madison West, though. So Madison West, last year at Nationals, I don't think it was their first national performance, but they didn't go to Nationals the previous year, I don't think. And they did really, really well. So, and this year, I have them in a very similar ranking, just one lower than they got at nationals last year. And I mean, you can see looking at their record, sometimes they're even able to like outcompete Marquette. You can see here very very close between the two when you super score. Um, let's see here. Yeah, so here they outcompete Marquette and Menominee, which is the Minnesota. No, it's not. It's not Minnesota. They got 3rd in Wisconsin. So still a very good performance from Madison West there. And then Boyceville here, not quite. I mean, Mounds View, not a super competitive team. Maybe I should have Mounds View here instead. But in fact, I'm gonna put them in my thing here so we can keep an eye on them. But I'm gonna hold my position here for Madison West. Oh, excuse me. Very competitive team, and no laughing matter to be sure. Next, we have Harriton. So Harriton is a little strange. Here at Mason, oh wow, look, it looks like they did pretty awful, but they did scratch in the builds since this was a satellite, and without the builds, they get 3rd, which is amazing at this tournament. And Lowe would still outcompete them, but I mean they outcompete like Solon and Clements there. and even Cumberland Valley. So even when you exclude the builds, they outcompete Cumberland Valley here. But if you look at Battle at Valley Forge, this really is not a great performance for Harriton. Again, apart from the fact that they didn't do that great, I don't really see any reason that this isn't unstacked Harriton. I could be wrong, and maybe again this is my Cumberland Valley bias coming in. I don't really know, but um, we do need some more data points for Harriton. I really like to see what stacked Terratin can do. So far, we just have unstacked Terratin. Hopefully, we'll get stacked Terratin at soaps or something like that. Um, but really, I mean, if this was just unstacked Terratin roster, then they have some work to do to catch up to Cumberland Valley. For now, though, I'm going to put them ahead and put them at 13th. I think that's a good compromise. Next, we have LASA, Liberal Arts and Science Academy from Texas. So, Texas last year was very interesting, probably the most interesting state results of all of them. I highly expected Jordan to win or to get second here, second to Seven Lakes. They did not. They lost to a tiebreaker to William P. Clements, which I actually had in fourth going into my prediction was that they would get fourth. Instead, they got second. Texas was very competitive, very close last year. And this year it looks to be very much the same. You can see I have Jordan and Clements here. But right now, I think Liberal Arts and Science Academy is outcompeting both of them for this second Texas seat to nationals. You can see, again, just outcompeting Jordan and Clements here at Seven Lakes. Um, you can see also here at Rickards doing pretty decent at a very competitive tournament. Um, University of Texas. Here they're able to not quite outcompete Jordan, but also not outcompete Clemens. So this is actually their worst performance. But I believe, yeah, so that's one of their, what's the word? Older performances. That was from October. Another one from October here. This one they do really well, I think. Okay, maybe not that great. But rest assured, I have my reasons for putting them this high. Their more recent tournament performances here are pretty good. Maybe I'm overestimating them. Oopsies. Um, maybe I'm overestimating them, but maybe not. We'll see. For now, I'm going to keep them here. Next, just outside the top 10, we have Marquette. So Marquette, premier team from Wisconsin. I didn't even bother super scoring them here. You already know they'll get first. Not really competing against anyone super competitive there. But we have a lot of data for Marquette here. And all of it tells us they're about the same as last year. You know, last year they got 10th at nationals. I think I predicted they would get 12th or 11th or something like that. And this year I have them in 11th. They might be in the top 10. They might be able to outcompete these Illinois teams. But right now I'm going to keep them at 11th. You can see, I mean, just summarizing it, it's just very good performances across the board. The only thing here, this is the reason I have these Illinois teams ahead, by the way. This is not a great performance for Marquette. These Illinois teams really pretty thoroughly outcompeted them. And I mean, I don't even know if this was unstacked. Like that's a pretty big ranking and team score difference there. Mason, you can see they scratched in the builds without. They get fourth. Very strong performance there. At their own invitational, they again very close to Madison West, but still pretty strong. I got to start hurrying this up though. Monta Vista again, pretty strong performance. Fourth without the builds. So I'll just keep going down the list. Rickards, very strong performance. Dulles, very strong. You get the idea. They're Marquette. You know they're good. But yeah, so I'm going to put them at 11th here, just because, like I said, at that tournament, the Illinois teams really did outcompete them. Speaking of which, let's talk about these Illinois teams. So, Stevenson, pretty disappointing finish for Stevenson at Nationals last year. They were the former national champion and they fell all the way down to 17th. Really not a great performance there. But this year, they do look to be decently strong so far. That we only have one data point for them, unfortunately, so I can't really put them higher than 10th, especially since they're competing really against Marquette and New Trier here are the competitive teams here. But yeah, they do New Trier barely outcompetes them, and I mean, Marquette. Like I said, this is not a great performance for Marquette. But really, this is their worst performance. So it looks like they should be a lot further ahead of Marquette, but I'm going to keep them just one place apart here. Speaking of New Trier, next we're moving on to New Trier, the Illinois state champion, I believe. Stevenson did not reclaim the Illinois state champion title. That went to New Trier last year, again by a tiebreaker. Yeah, New Trier, we have a little bit more data for. Again, here they outcompete Stevenson by 3 points. Nothing major there, but it gives them a very, very slight edge. Here, Rickards, again, you can see pretty decent performance, outcompeted um, by Marquette. And I think, did I super score them? I did. Yes, they get fourth super scored. Marquette gets seventh super scored. So again, outcompeting Marquette when you super score them, and even like rivaling like Monte Vista kind of, and some of these other California teams. Um, and then the most recent thing we have for them is really not a good performance. This might be their B teams. I'm not sure. Again, maybe it's a similar situation to Harriton, where like, oh, it might be their like Harriton at Battle. It might have been their B teams unstacked or something like that, or they're missing people. I don't know. There's a whole number of reasons that teams can do really well at a bunch of tournaments and then just not well at some others. But we do have some more data for New Trier than we do for Harriton, so I'm going to keep him at 9th. In 8th, we have Seven Lakes. So Seven Lakes, pretty similar to Stevenson. I expected them to be, in the top 5. I think I predicted them at like 4th or 5th. And then they ended up getting 12th. Very disappointing finish for Seven Lakes. This year, they look to be pretty decent this year. Outcompeting these other Texas teams. We really only have them compared to these Texas teams. I guess here we have them compared to Monte Vista, and they they do really well against Monte Vista. But so maybe, I don't know, maybe they should be higher. I don't know. Some of these tournaments they don't do that great in though. Here again, just outcompeting these Texas teams. Let's see here, Dulles. Marquette actually outcompetes them by quite a bit. Sorry. They scratched in tournament specific events. So without, they get first. Again, a fantastic um, performance from Seven Lakes there without your tournament specific events. So yeah, just again, great record across the board. Next, Syosset. So Syosset did really, really well last year. And so far, I think they're doing a little less well this year. Obviously, 7th is still a fantastic ranking, but I think they are doing slightly worse this year. Here, this is probably their B team being outperformed by Niskayuna, I believe is how you pronounce this. Man, New York's got some really interesting team names. I really like it. Battle at Valley Forge, again, upon reflection, when I was, because I attended this tournament with Cumberland Valley, when I was there, I thought this was their A team. Upon reflection, I do think this is their B team. Again, if this is their A team, then Syosset and Cumberland Valley should like swap spots here. But again, I don't think so. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. I mean, strong performance, not really against competitive teams. Cornell, again, really strong performance here, but when you super score these teams, they drop to 3rd. So again, pretty strong performances across the board, but we need more data for them against competitive teams. We need very definitive stacked data for them. Until then, I'm keeping them in 7th. Excuse me. Next, we have Mason. So these Ohio teams, we really don't have too much out of. And what we do have out of them um, just is not like very good. They're either competing with each other or competing against less competitive teams like Carmel and Munster. I mean, Carmel used to be really, really strong, but last year at Nationals, they did not do very well. Yeah, 25th. I mean, still decent in the top, half, but for a former like top 10 team, pretty disappointing. But anyway, Mason. So here again, very strong performance. Unstacked Mason. Their 3 teams beat all the Indiana teams. Here, competing with Solon and Troy and these other Michigan teams. Again, they outcompete all the Michigan teams and are in contention with Solon, and that's really all we have for Mason so far. So pretty safe to say they're strong this year. I just don't really know how strong. Similar story for Solon. Solon, honestly, we have some pretty I'm gonna say just disappointing results so far. Like this one, they do beat Mason and these other teams, so that's pretty good. But then down here, I mean, I don't know, maybe they were missing people here. But again, there's a whole host of reasons that teams can underperform in tournaments. But getting sixth here super scored is really not great for them. Um, and that's all we have for Solon. So I'm going to keep him at fifth now. They could easily be higher later in the season, but for now, I'm keeping him at fifth. Next, William G. Enlow. So this is a really big jump. Enlow, they got, where were they last year? They got 16th last year, pretty decent performance, but why do I have them all the way up in fourth here? Well, let's take a look. So, admittedly, we do only have one result for Enlow, so maybe I should drop them a little bit just because of that. I really wanted to keep these Ohio teams together, though, and I didn't want to put Enlow below both of them because this is a really, really good performance here. Um, so, I mean, they get first, super scored at Mason, which is one of, if not the most competitive tournament that has happened so far. So, I mean, again, just out competing all of these really competitive teams. Fantastic performance for Enlow. So I'm going to keep him up there. Speaking of teams we don't have too much from, Troy. We only have one thing, and it's not a competitive invitational. I didn't even bother super scoring them. Like, they get first. It doesn't really matter how much they get first by because, I mean, none of these teams are very competitive outside of California or inside California, I should say. Outside, I mean, some of these teams can probably beat, the like Pioneer and Seven Lakes and stuff like that. But inside California, not very competitive. Anyway, this is all we have for Troy. I mean, they're Troy. Like, they're going to be in the top five probably. So I'll just keep them here until we have more data for them. Monta Vista. So we have a lot of data for Monta Vista, and I'm kind of running out of time. So I'm just going to breeze by it here. You can take a closer look at this on Duosmium, but I mean, just across the board, pretty strong performances. Here they scratched in the builds. They get first without. Whoopsies. There we go. That's the same tournament. At their own tournament, scratched in builds. They get 12th without, but this was their own tournament, so I imagine the best people were probably helping to run it. Rickards, again, very strong performance here. They do get third to Seven Lakes and stuff like that. Georgia Scrimmage, very strong performance. Again, unstacked probably. And Gulso is their most recent performance. Again, very strong, outperforming Mountain View by quite a bit. So, I mean, you know them. They're the national champions. No surprise they're this high. And last and certainly not least, in first place, I am ranking Montgomery right now. So, Montgomery, I believe, yes, it's another team that we only really have one thing for. So, again, maybe I shouldn't rank them this high. But, I mean, this one thing is absolutely fantastic for them. Like, do I? Yeah, I have them super scored. They get first by a lot, like outcompeting, again, Thomas Jefferson. A little strange to see them ranking this high, but outcompeting probably Syosset's A team, out competing Thomas Jefferson, Ward Melville, Lower Marion, West Winster. I mean, just all these really competitive teams here. They outcompete them by a lot. I'm going to keep them in first. Maybe that's a little overestimating, but I did underestimate them at nationals. I thought they'd get like sixth. They ended up getting fourth. So who knows? Montgomery could be on track for a national champion this year. Who knows? I believe that's all I wanted to talk about. I want to make sure. Oh, yeah, okay, I talked about that. Never mind. Yes. Oh, sorry, Novi. I have slow start on here twice for you. Yeah, so I think that's all I wanted to talk about right now. So you can see we have a decent bit of data so far for a lot of these teams, not a lot of data for some others. That'll definitely change as the season progresses. I'm really excited to see how this list evolves as the season progresses. And if you're excited to see that too, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of the team performances. And when state performances come around, I'll go over those too. I'll, of course, make national predictions. I don't know if I'll do MIT predictions. The prediction videos were kind of my least favorite videos to make. I like these videos where I'm just looking at, team performances across the board. So we'll see. No guarantees. But until next time, I'll see you later and have a fantastic day.